As you know, the title of my book is The Soul Genome, Science and Reincarnation. The soul genome is an effort to expand the traditional notion of the soul as a sort of a spiritual organism. But in science, it's not very useful to say we're talking about the soul genome, because that has such connotations that vary depending on the belief systems of people. Ian Stevenson, the psychiatrist who really is the dean of scientific research and reincarnation, near the end of his life reached the point where he said, I don't know that I can really say this proves reincarnation, but there has to be some container, some mechanism that carries forward all of these memories and these physical features from one life to the other. And so he chose the word psychophore, which in Greek means the container of the psyche. And he said, this container must carry all this information forward. When we did our meta-analysis of the cases, we discovered that we were talking about more than just a container. We were talking about a container with real factors included in it, real DNA patterns, real personality traits, real mental levels of development that we could correlate with IQ and other measures of our mental development. So I used the word, which is a little bit different from Ian Stevenson, psychoplasm, which connotes the same idea that there is a container of the psyche, but that it has these various factors, which is really analogous to a cell. We have a cell with a membrane, and in the membrane you have the mitochondrial DNA, you have the Y chromosomes, you have the organelles, you have all of the parts of the cell that we read about in our biology textbooks. And so the cytoplasm, from our theoretical point of view, contains the same analogous components that shape not only the physical body, but the personality of the individual. The genome that we have so much publicity about today that comes to us from our parents is not the same in all details as the soul genome, which is the concept that we use, and we use the scientific term psychoplasm, because it involves something greater than the physical chromosomes that are passed to us from our parents. And when you see variations in the current genome of an individual born of a mother and a father who are of a particular race or cultural orientation, the child may very well have features that are not part of that same genome that the parents passed on. And we say, where did that come from? We don't know. We think that it probably comes from variations that we find in that parental genome. Research in Canada and elsewhere has shown that up to 14% of the genes that we have at birth differ from those of the parents. So part of the differences that we find in reincarnation research may be in those variations, or they may very well be in the 90 to 95% of what we call junk DNA, because we have not been able to identify the functions of those DNA strands and patterns that are there. We know they're there, but we know that they don't seem to be affecting the kinds of development that we are able to test in our genetic system today. So the real issue here is whether or not reincarnation involves a process that is separate from the biological reproduction process. And the evidence to date suggests that there is something beyond the biological inheritance of a set of genes involved. At this point in our evidence, it's quite clear that physical features can show up in the person's current genotype and how that's manifest in his phenotype as he grows up, which are different from and are not found in the 46 chromosomes that are passed down by the mother and father in the natural process of reproduction. In some instances where children are born and considered to be reincarnations of their grandparents, you could assume that, well, the similarities came through the parental genome. But we have enough cases where you don't have that similarity and you don't have that parental phylogenetic tree pathway to tie to that previous lifetime. There has to be another mechanism, and that's why we call it the soul genome rather than simply the genome of 46 chromosomes.